Listen now to the book, One Night with the Hybrid King, written by the author Anya Curves. If you want to buy the ebook, link in the description. Subscribe to the channel. Like and share. Chapter 36, Seraphina. Hatred burns in my veins like living fire as I watch Caelum leave the room with heavy steps, the echo reverberating off the walls. The door closes with a dull thud, but the sound does nothing to relieve the fury consuming me from within. The urge to scream, to release all the anger storming in my chest, is nearly uncontrollable. I want to destroy everything around me, every stone of this cursed castle, every useless object surrounding us, and especially my mate. The man who dared betray me, who dared raise his hand against me for the sake of a human. My throat still burns, throbbing with the memory of Caelum's brutal touch. The violent act caught me off guard, something I never expected from him. Never, in all the years we've been together, had he lost control of his lycan so viscerally, not even before our greatest enemies. Yet now, for some despicable human, he showed a side of himself I had never seen, a side that revealed just how deep the chasm Aria is digging between us truly runs. That damned human woman. I explode, my sharp voice cutting through the heavy air in the room. My body trembles with rage. She's destroying everything I've built, even Caelum. My eyes burn with restrained tears, but I refuse to let them fall. I walk over to the mirror on my vanity, and the reflection staring back at me nearly makes me sick. The red welt on my neck grows more visible by the second. Caelum's fingerprints imprinted on my skin like a living reminder of the humiliation I just endured. I try to take a deep breath, but each inhale is a painful reminder of his strength, of how deeply he hurt me. For a moment, I consider using enchantments or makeup to hide the mark. But I quickly dismiss the idea. No, I won't conceal this. On the contrary, I want everyone to see how the so-revered king of Veridiana treated his beloved queen. I want everyone to know that Caelum, the mighty, the tireless, lost his mind over a worthless human. This mark will be my weapon, my shield, a visible testament to his weakness and his betrayal. Damn it! I exclaim, clenching my fists at my sides as my nails dig into my palms. My entire plan to kill Aria has crumbled, and that's why the hatred within me grows stronger with each passing second. I was so close to eliminating her once and for all. I take a deep breath and run a hand through my hair, trying to calm my mind and find a new strategy. The image of Aria, frail and vulnerable in the hospital, brings me a fleeting moment of relief. If she's confined with the night ichor venom coursing through her veins, at least that wretched old human accomplished one thing right. I pace the room, the nearly inaudible sound of my bare feet against the cold floor the only sign of the whirlwind of thoughts raging in my mind. The marksman I hired should have fulfilled his part as well. He must have eliminated the old woman, as I ordered. I can't leave any loose ends that might trace this chaos back to me. When the time comes, he'll have to die too. It's the only way to ensure my involvement in this scheme remains hidden. Every piece of this puzzle must be meticulously removed until there's nothing left to incriminate me. When Caelum mentioned the antidote, I knew immediately that he had gone to the vaults and noticed the vial was missing. I removed it as a precaution, hiding it in my secret sanctuary in the castle's dungeons. That vial is the key to the future, but it's also the final piece of my plan to rid myself of Aria for good. The 4 days I requested are nothing but a ruse to buy time. I need that time to think, to devise a new way to destroy her before Caelum realizes the deception. He may have given me 2 days, but by then Aria will already be dead, suffocated by the venom coursing through her veins. My mind races incessantly, searching for an escape plan, a solution in case the unexpected happens, and she somehow survives. The walls of the room seem to close in around me, as though the very structure of the castle conspires against me. I step out onto the balcony, seeking the cool night air, but the suffocating sensation persists. The sky is filled with stars, yet even their beauty offers me no solace. The stars of Veridiana, bright and distant, pale in comparison to those of my former kingdom, Syltirion. There, the stars sang to us, their melodies whispered spells into the clear nights. I remember how the stars illuminated our ceremonies, bringing wisdom and power with every song. The longing for my homeland grows within me like an open wound, throbbing with the pain of the exile I chose. The fear that Syltirion will fade into oblivion and ruin haunts me on every lonely night I spend here, in this foreign castle. As I gaze at the night sky, searching for answers in the constellations above, an unexpected memory surfaces. Karen's face, my old love, invades my thoughts like a sigh of relief amid the chaos. His smile, his words, his touch. The memory of him soothes my mind, bringing a sense of control I had lost. Karen always knew how to handle situations like this. He was one of the most powerful enchantress I have ever known, a warrior of the magical arts, trained from boyhood to wield magic in the heat of battle. He was my strength in moments of weakness, my refuge on dark nights. He would help me now, as he always did. He would know exactly what to do to eliminate Aria and her bastards, to restore my position of absolute power. With this newfound hope, I stride quickly back to my room. The soft sound of my bare feet echoes on the marble floor, blending with the distant noise of the wind rattling the castle windows. I open the drawer of my vanity and pick up my phone. Memories of Karen flood back with intensity as I scroll through the contact list, my finger hesitating over his name. We haven't spoken in years, and I don't know what has become of his life since then. He could be married, with a family, having moved on. But now, all of that feels irrelevant. I need him. With a swift motion, I press the button to call. My heart races, pounding in a frantic rhythm as the phone rings on the other end. Anxiety builds, mingled with an excitement I haven't felt in years. Will he answer? Does he still think of me? When the call is finally answered, my breath halts for a moment. Seraphina, his deep, resonant voice cuts through the silence, and for a few seconds, all the fear, all the uncertainty dissipates. Just the sound of my name, spoken by him, makes me feel alive again.
Chapter 37, Caelum. Where are you going, Seraphina? My voice echoes through the wide hall, laden with distrust. Seraphina stands at the door, one hand resting gently on the frame as the morning light spills over her figure. The silence she shared with me during breakfast lingers in the air, a chasm between us. This was the first night in 5 years that we didn't share the same room. The physical separation felt inevitable after our last argument, a rift that carried more than bitter words. The silence in the castle, broken only by the occasional clink of cutlery or the whispers of distant servants, no longer felt comfortable. After the argument, I chose to return to the hospital where Aria was admitted. Lyra, Aria's mother, was there too, though her presence felt transient, as if she were there out of obligation. The cold and often cruel way she treats her own daughter deeply unsettles me. I wonder how anyone can be so indifferent, so icy, in the face of their own blood suffering. But I didn't return to the castle until the following morning, after Lyra resumed her position by Aria's side. "Don't worry, Your Majesty," Seraphina replies, her voice as sharp as blades. "I am well aware of the deadline you gave me to try and save your mistress." The word cuts between us like a whip, dripping with venom. The disdain in her eyes is unmistakable. "You don't need to stay awake for me, or even in our room, if you prefer not to again." Her eyes gleam with cold malice as her next words escape like a sharp dagger. "Tell me, has the little human been serving you well in bed?" The rancorous boldness in her voice is too much to bear. My hand slams against the solid wooden table, the impact reverberating through the hall. My chest burns with rage, and the table groans under the force of my blow, yet Seraphina doesn't flinch. Her golden eyes falter for a fleeting moment, a hesitation almost imperceptible. But she quickly regains her composure, meeting my gaze with that familiar scorn that always provokes me. 2 days, Seraphina." I practically shout the reminder, my voice firm as stone, trying to reclaim some semblance of control. She responds with a laugh, a hollow and cruel sound, before turning to leave the hall. The silk of her gown glides softly across the floor, following the rhythm of her determined steps. I watch her retreat, her silhouette slowly vanishing down the corridor. As her presence fades, silence once again fills the space, leaving me alone with my thoughts. My mind keeps turning, replaying the echo of our cutting words. How do we get to this point? The cruelty that now defines us feels so distant from what we once were. I wonder if, in some way, I'm losing my mind, losing control of who I am, of who I'm supposed to be. As king, as a husband, as a man. Why does Aria hold so much power over me? How has this human woman, seemingly fragile and defenseless, managed to infiltrate my heart so deeply that she makes me question everything I once believed unshakable? It wasn't just a kiss that night or the night we spent together 5 years ago. It was something much greater, something that shook me to my core. A force awakened within me since then that I still can't fully understand. There's something about Aria, something that draws me to her like an irresistible magnet, yet I can't define what it is. As these questions dance in my mind, I feel the growing urge to return to the hospital, to see her, to be by her side. The worry for Aria's health eats away at me. But I know I have responsibilities that cannot be neglected, obligations that come with the weight of the crown. I should be focused on my duties as king. The kingdom needs me. It needs stability, decisive actions. But there are moments when this burden becomes unbearable. Sometimes I seriously consider abdicating, letting someone else take my place. A king who can bear this weight without being crushed by emotions and personal dilemmas. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, they say. And how true it is. Being king is not the glorious tale the stories suggest. The power I must exude for my people and the enemies surrounding our borders is not truly mine. It's a facade, an illusion I created and maintained to protect those who depend on me. Sitting at the table, the remnants of an untouched breakfast before me, I allow myself a rare moment of vulnerability. My fingers drum against the wooden surface as my eyes wander across the empty hall. Every detail of this place reminds me of what I'm losing. My freedom, my peace, my heart. I try to push away thoughts of Aria, of Seraphina, of the chaos now consuming my life. But it's futile. The 2 days that passed were nothing short of torture. Every second seemed to drag on, as if the hands of the clock were sinking into quicksand. My worry for Aria, mixed with the constant tension of dealing with Seraphina, made every moment feel eternal. The atmosphere was dense, heavy, saturated with the anguish of waiting for something that seemed impossible to resolve. Talking to Seraphina had become an almost unbearable task. Her coldness was something I never imagined would reach this level, not even during our worst moments. She left the castle every day without offering any explanation, and every time we tried to speak, our conversations turned into small battles, fought with sharp words and insinuations. Her constant jabs about Aria were relentless, almost as if they were a reminder that, in her eyes, Aria would never be anything more than an intruder in our lives. The end of the second day arrived like a shadow on the horizon, bringing with it a growing sense of despair. Aria worsened with every passing moment, and the doctors were doing everything within and beyond their power to keep her alive. I sat in the armchair near the window, the soft light of the evening casting long shadows across the room. The melancholy of twilight, with its grayish hues and the quietness of approaching night, mirrored my state of mind. My laptop rested on my lap as I tried, almost mechanically, to handle the kingdom's affairs. The sound of keys beneath my fingers blended with the beeping of machines, creating a silent and solemn soundtrack for the scene. Then, from afar, I sensed Seraphina's scent. Even before hearing her footsteps, her familiar perfume, with its touch of dark flowers and herbs, already announced her presence. The sound of my mate's steps echoed through the hospital corridors, intermingling with the distant noises of hurried nurses passing back and forth. I closed the laptop before she even reached the door. When Seraphina finally appeared at the threshold of the room, her figure radiated an imposing, almost sovereign presence. She wore a deep red dress adorned with small gemstones that sparkled under the room's cold light. The V neckline accentuated the delicate curve of her chest, and over it, a beige overcoat rested on her shoulders, lending her an air of distant and untouchable royalty. Her golden eyes, those same eyes that had captivated me countless times, now gleamed with a cold fire, something almost incomprehensible. The harsh white light of the hospital made her features appear even sharper, her beauty as cold as it was cutting. She stood firmly at the doorway, her posture exuding authority and indifference. I rose slowly from the armchair, never taking my eyes off her, and for a moment, we locked gazes in heavy silence. Time seemed to freeze. What must have been a minute felt like an eternity. Her lips curved slightly, not exactly into a smile, but into a hint of superiority, until finally, she shifted her gaze to Aria, who lay motionless on the bed. Aria's ghostly appearance was striking. Her brown skin had taken on an eerie, almost cadaverous pallor, with blue veins visibly etched beneath her translucent skin. The dressing on her neck, changed religiously every 12 hours, served as a constant reminder of her fragile grip on life. Dark, deep circles shadowed her eyes, etching her face with marks that seemed permanent. Seraphina observed her from head to toe, as if she were evaluating a defective piece, a burden she was being forced to carry. Her expression was a mix of disdain, curiosity, and something I couldn't completely decipher. Then, with a slow and deliberate motion, she slipped her hand into the pocket of her overcoat and pulled out a small transparent vial containing a light purple liquid. Seraphina held the vial between her fingers with a careless lightness, swinging it in the air as if it were an insignificant toy. The vial reflected the light in the room, making the liquid appear even more enigmatic. "It wasn't easy to make in 2 days, Your Majesty." Her voice broke the silence with calculated firmness, each word enunciated with precision. There was a tone of pride in the way she spoke. "But as you reminded me of something very important that I was starting to forget about myself, I am a powerful enchantress." Her words dripped with a pride that was almost venomous. With a swift and precise movement, Seraphina tossed the vial in my direction. My instinct acted faster than my mind. My reflexes caught the vial in midair before it could fall. Seraphina's lips curled into a faint smile, full of disdain, almost as if she were savoring the irony of the situation. "There's your whore's salvation." The final word left her mouth like a dagger, cold and calculated, resonating in the room, echoing between us. "Thank you," I replied coldly, ignoring her jab at Aria. With the vial opened, I moved toward Aria and poured the antidote's liquid onto her lips. Aria swallowed with difficulty, and I felt a wave of relief as, moments later, her heartbeat grew slightly stronger. Chapter 38, Caelum. "Tell me, Caelum, when this human awakens, will you have the audacity to take her to the castle?" Seraphina's voice cut through the air like a whip, her tone laced with jealousy and anger, two emotions I had rarely seen in her so explicitly. Her posture was rigid, almost defiant, but I could sense, in the subtle inflections of her voice and the unsteady flicker in her golden eyes, that there was more behind her cold demeanor. "Will you start sharing your bed with her?" My gaze fixed on her, and for a moment, all I could see was the flash of insecurity that crossed Seraphina's face, a fleeting moment of vulnerability, quickly stifled by her icy exterior. At that moment, I realized something I had never stopped to consider before. Seraphina, despite all her coldness and the conflicts between us, had been trying to fulfill her duties as my mate and queen. She did what she could to maintain appearances, even though our marriage was slowly crumbling, corroded by time, lies, and the choices we had made. I had never allowed myself to think about what it all meant for her, for us. I decided to move closer to her. The sound of the machines keeping Aria alive became a distant echo, while the only thing that mattered at that moment was the shrinking space between me and Seraphina. As I approached, I noticed something I had overlooked before: dark bruises forming on her delicate neck, marks I immediately recognized. Remnants of a moment when I had lost control, when I had succumbed to my darker side. The sight of those marks hit me like a punch to the gut. Never, in all our years together, had I caused Seraphina physical pain, and now, regret filled me like a slow poison. What had I done? "Seraphina," my voice came out almost in a whisper, heavy with remorse. I approached her cautiously, fearing that a sudden move might make her retreat forever. "She is not my lover, and I will not take her anywhere. I only needed to save her." The words came out heavy, dense, and as I spoke them, I tried to convince myself of their truth, though deep down, I knew things were not so simple. Not with Aria, not with what she stirred in me. My hand rose, and with a gentle gesture, I tucked a strand of Seraphina's fiery red hair behind her ear. A shiver ran through her body, almost imperceptible, but I noticed it. I couldn't tell if it was fear or another emotion consuming her, and that uncertainty destroyed me. Seraphina had always been an enigma to me, but now, at this moment, I realized how far apart we had grown, how little I truly knew her anymore. "Remember that you are a terrible liar, Majesty," she replied, her voice low but laden with hurt. Her words struck me like a sharp blow. She was right, of course. Seraphina had always been perceptive, knowing me in ways few others ever could. 5 years together, sharing our most intimate moments, battles, and joys. The love that had once flourished between us now seemed to wither. But even so, something still bound us. Deep roots of custom, secrets, and mutual understanding that did not fade easily. My hand slid to her face, caressing her pale skin. I tried to salvage something, any trace of the affection we once shared. But it was difficult. The distance between us now felt like an abyss. And no matter how much I reached for her, I felt that Seraphina was already too far away. My fingers glided softly down her neck, brushing lightly against the bruises I had caused. A pang of pain surged through my chest, as if each touch reminded me of how deeply I had hurt her, not just physically, but emotionally as well. "Forgive me," I murmur, sincerity dripping from every word. My heart feels heavy, aching, at the sight before me. I will never do this to you again. Promises spill forth easily, but deep down, I am unsure if I can keep them. Seraphina places her hand over mine, her delicate fingers gently removing my hand from her neck. Our eyes meet, and there, in the depths of her golden gaze, I see the pain I caused, a pain I doubt will ever completely fade. I have created a crack within her, a fissure that may never heal. "Good luck with your human, Caelum," she declares bitterly, her voice laden with a sadness that cuts deeper than any knife. "Let's see how long that lasts." Her words are a soft poison, left hanging in the air like a curse, and before I can respond, a sound at the door interrupts our conversation. "My queen, your majesty," Asher announces reverently, his eyes avoiding any acknowledgement of the tension that clearly filled the space between Seraphina and me. Seraphina seizes the interruption to distance herself from me, as though the touch we had just shared was a burden too heavy to bear. She crosses paths with Asher without even glancing at him, and makes her way to the exit. The door closes behind Seraphina, and suddenly, the room feels empty. Only Asher, Aria, and I remain, surrounded by a heavy silence that drapes itself over us like a cloak of shadows. "Yes, Asher, what is it?" I ask, forcing myself to resume the posture of a king, setting aside for a moment the wounds that had just been laid bare. "It's about the shooter, Majesty. We've found him," Asher announced with careful formality, though there was something in his tone, a faint tremor, that told me the news was not as simple as it seemed. At his words, I felt a weight settle on my chest. I looked at Aria, still lying in bed, her breathing soft and fragile, then turned my gaze back to Asher. "From your tone, I gather there's something worse in all of this," I commented, striving to remain calm as my mind began to spiral into catastrophic scenarios. Asher hesitated briefly, but then continued, his voice heavy with restrained frustration. "Unfortunately, Majesty, the shooter was a mercenary. We interrogated him for hours. He revealed that he had been hired by a mysterious woman. A mysterious woman." The words echoed in my mind. An uncomfortable void grew within me. How many times had I heard of mysterious women in conspiracies against the crown? Always shadowy figures, unseen, pulling strings from afar. Each of these figures brought with them a new layer of chaos, of uncertainty. Asher continued, his words weighing down like lead. When we pressed him for more information about this woman, he couldn't provide answers. The payment was made in gold coins, Majesty, and they bore the royal family's crest. My blood ran cold at his words. The royal family's crest. The implications of this were staggering. Suddenly, everything that had been happening, the attacks, the poisonings, Aria's abduction, took on a new dimension. Betrayal was closer than I could have imagined. Were my own allies, my own family, involved in this? I looked at Asher, trying to discern more from his expression, but he maintained his firm posture, though his eyes conveyed the gravity of the situation. He handed me the tablet, and there were the photos. The site where they captured the mercenary, the gold coins gleaming under the light, marked with the unmistakable crest of the family. Each image seemed to deepen the abyss of distrust opening beneath my feet. The mercenary knew too much, yet not enough. I needed answers, but they were slipping through the cracks. Asher continued, the frustration evident in his voice. The moment we detained the mercenary at the location and began transporting him to the prison, he unfortunately passed away. A wave of anger surged through me. What? What the hell did you do to him, Asher? My voice came out louder than I intended, echoing through the silent room, clashing against the cold, white walls. The pressure was mounting, as if the air itself was growing heavier, almost suffocating. Asher, however, remained unfazed. He knew my outburst wasn't personal. Nothing, Majesty. By the time we arrived at the prison and opened the van, the man's entire life force had been drained. Someone, perhaps the woman who hired him, used forbidden magic, Asher reported. His words carried a weight that seemed to crush any hope of immediate clarity. Forbidden magic. The mention of such a practice was enough to send cold shivers down one's spine. I knew all too well the kind of magic he was referring to. Only the most powerful, or the most desperate, dared to resort to such practices. The mercenary's death was no accident. It was carefully orchestrated to prevent any trace leading back to the person responsible. Then what we're looking for is an enchantress, I murmured, my thoughts racing as I tried to connect the dots, forming a picture far darker than I had initially imagined. The details aligned, but in a chaotic, fragmented way. It was like trying to assemble a puzzle with pieces still hidden. Asher, all of this is far too chaotic. Aria's former boss's death, the kidnapping. His wife mentioned a woman she called Mississippi. It could be the same one connected to the mercenary, I recounted. That's why Night Ichor was used. Only an enchantress can handle and create that poison. But there are also the gold coins and the disappearance of the poison and antidote from my vault. Whoever it is, they are directly involved with us, I declared, troubled. Forbidden magic is a dangerous level. It involves blood sacrifices and entities from the forbidden realm. In my kingdom, the use of forbidden magic is against the law. Even Seraphina herself was not permitted to wield it within our realm, and now, someone was daring to challenge Veridiana's most sacred laws. This woman, this enchantress, whoever she was, wasn't just targeting Aria. She was directly defying the crown. My mind began working through the possibilities of what to do next. Who was the person behind these crimes? Chapter 39, Caelum. I collapsed into the armchair in Aria's hospital room, exhausted. The physical fatigue from days without proper sleep weighs heavily on my shoulders. But the emotional burden is even more crushing. The armchair is uncomfortable, hard, but it doesn't matter now. The weight of responsibilities, doubts, and the growing tension with Seraphina is overwhelming every part of me. The room around me is silent, except for the faint hum of medical equipment and the rhythmic, yet increasingly strong, sound of Aria's heartbeat on the monitor. That steady beat brings a sense of relief that warms my own heart. My mind is troubled by Asher's latest reports, but for now, I try to focus only on Aria. Her skin, which had seemed so pale and lifeless, is beginning to regain its color. The soft, tawny tone of her complexion is returning, bringing back the beauty that always captures my attention. Aria is unconscious, but even so, she exudes a strong presence, something that holds me to her in a way I cannot explain. The doctors came a few hours after I delivered the antidote, checking and monitoring Aria's recovery. One of them, the eldest, with deep wrinkles on his face and gray hair, approaches Aria, examining her carefully. His expression of surprise grows with every passing second as he makes his notes. It's remarkable how she's recovering, considering she's human, he comments, almost as if speaking to himself, though the tone of admiration is unmistakable. He then looks at me, as if seeking an explanation for the miracle he's witnessing. People of this race don't survive long with Nightshade Ichor in their system, especially with a wound like that on the neck. His words hang in the air, a reminder of the gravity of what happened. The wound, so close to being fatal. I close my eyes for a moment, trying to push away the images of the assassination attempt. When I open my eyes, the doctor is still looking at me, his gaze seeking confirmation. Your Majesty possesses a unique gift, he continues, tilting his head respectfully. You saved her life. I force myself to smile. Thank you, doctor. In truth, I had help my beloved and dear wife, Queen Seraphina, made the antidote, I inform him with pride in my voice. The argument with Seraphina also lingers in my memory. Should I try to save my marriage? The question reverberates in my mind as the doctor continues his examination. Seraphina has been loyal, ever present, a good queen for the kingdom of Veridiana. She manages the palace with mastery. Her concerns about the enchantress race are plausible and necessary. I realize this now, after the incident with Aria. But, for some reason, something feels off. There's a growing distance between us, a coldness I'm not sure can be resolved through state duties or strategic alliances alone. Our queen is an extraordinary woman, Your Majesty, the doctor says, breaking my thoughts. The heir born of you two will be powerful and deeply cherished. His words are laden with an expectation I cannot fully share. An heir. The word seems to echo inside me, heavy and lifeless. Everyone around me talks about heirs, as if they're the solution to every problem. But do I truly want that? To be a father? The kingdom is already an overwhelming responsibility. Like a gigantic child, I must nurture and protect. Having a child of flesh and blood, would that really solve anything? Or would it only add more weight to my already burdened shoulders? I sink deeper into the armchair, lost in these conflicting thoughts. My gaze drifts back to Aria. My reflections are interrupted by the abrupt arrival of Lyra, Aria's mother. Being in the same room with this woman is far more stressful than hours of meetings with the royal council. She storms into the room like a tempest, her eyes anxious and brimming with worry. Your daughter is recovering steadily, Lady Lyra, I say. The doctors believe she might wake up soon, perhaps today or tomorrow. By the end of the week, she should be discharged and ready to return home. Thank God, Lyra exclaims, but her expression doesn't show relief. Instead, there's an underlying bitterness, a poorly concealed tension in her voice. I need her to wake up. We're running out of money, and those two children ask about their mother every day. The complaining tone in her voice irritates me, but I don't let it show. My arms crossed over my chest, I simply nod, offering a calm confirmation. Well, don't worry. She'll wake up soon. Aria is in the best hospital in the kingdom. Lyra looks at me intently, expecting something more, perhaps an offer, a magical solution to her financial troubles. Yes, thank you very much, Your Majesty. Her voice trembles slightly, before she continues with what she was clearly holding back. Forgive me for asking something so impertinent, but it's necessary. About this hospital. How will it be paid? We can't afford the expenses. I'm just a simple woman, and I can't work. I observe her in silence for a moment. I know the last part of her statement is a lie. The slight irregularity in her heartbeat proves it. Don't worry, I reply, keeping my voice firm and direct. I'm covering all the expenses. Aria is under my protection and care here at the hospital until she can return to work. Lyra smiles, but her smile is overly exaggerated, and the compliments that follow are as hollow as the promises I'm used to hearing in the palace corridors. Your Majesty, you're truly a savior, a wonderful man. Before she can continue her cascade of empty praises, I stand and leave the room. Each step I take toward the parking lot brings a growing sense of relief, as if being away from Lyra lightens part of the burden I'm carrying. My emotions, however, remain in turmoil. Upon reaching the parking lot, my phone vibrates. A message from Asher. He's back, Your Majesty. A rare piece of good news within hours leaves me impressed. Perhaps my luck is beginning to return. Upon arriving at the palace, I'm immediately greeted by my cousin, Alexander, Duke of the Lowlands. Seeing him from a distance, his appearance surprises me. The Alexander the First knew before his long espionage mission had changed noticeably. His once long, wild hair was now short, styled practically, and his skin bore a deep tan. From what I see, you made the most of the tropical weather in the other kingdom, cousin, I declare in a slightly amused tone, my voice echoing through the vast hall as I approach him. Alexander lets out a hearty laugh, the sound reverberating almost vibrantly in the room. When we embrace, I feel the strength of a warrior hardened by life beyond our borders, but also the lightness of someone who had a chance to relax, even if only briefly. Between one act of espionage and another, I enjoyed the beaches and learned to surf, but of course, all to maintain my cover, Caelum. He replies, his voice tinged with laughter and nostalgia. I smile, a genuine smile, something that has been rare lately with the growing tensions in the kingdom. Come. Let's drink and eat something while you tell me everything that's happened in the last 5 years you've been away, I order, placing a friendly hand on his shoulder as we move to the smaller hall where meals are served in greater privacy. Alexander recounts everything about the enchantress kingdom located at the continent's far end. We've had some issues with smuggling from them, and have always considered the possibility of attempting an invasion. Sending Alexander, there was a decision I made 5 years ago, right after I was crowned. I was full of ambition, eager to conquer the world and eradicate all disorder in Veridiana. 5 years have passed, and I feel I haven't accomplished even half of what I planned back then. Caelum, the kingdom of Syltirion, is astonishing in many ways. They face challenges like any other kingdom, but the advancements they've made in blending magic and technology are something I could never have imagined. It's as if they've fused both worlds into something entirely new and terrifyingly efficient, Alexander reports, his voice still tinged with fascination. He gestures lightly, as if trying to illustrate the grandeur of what he witnessed. As I listen to his account, I feel a twinge of envy. Alexander had the chance to experience a kind of freedom that, despite his cover and duties, seemed less burdensome than the responsibilities I bear as king. I travel from time to time, yes, but always for diplomatic reasons, always with a purpose that prevents me from simply enjoying what the world has to offer. But tell me, cousin, and the women? Did any enchantress manage to enchant your eyes? I tease, trying to ease the growing tension with humor. Soon enough, you'll have to follow your king's example and marry, after all. Alexander's eyes sparkle at the mention of women, and for a brief moment, I notice his heartbeat quicken. He tries to disguise it, but the gleam in his gaze is unmistakable. The women there are impressive, wonderful companions in bed, I'll admit. He begins, but his tone quickly turns more serious. However, my heart remained here in Veridiana. I plan to reclaim it after this meeting with you, cousin. The sincerity in his voice makes me raise an eyebrow. Perhaps, after so much time, Alexander has finally found something, or someone, that ties him to our kingdom on a more personal level. Well, I won't keep you for long then. The reason I summoned you back home is grave. The levity of our conversation vanishes as I mention the troubles plaguing Veridiana. We're facing attacks from rebels, and I fear some renegade lycans have allied with an enchantress. You are our best spy, Alexander. I need you to infiltrate the wolf-spawn renegades network and uncover who's behind all this. My voice is serious, reflecting the gravity of the situation. But I'm not a cruel king, I add, a small smile forming on my face. I'll allow you to stay at the castle, visit whoever you wish, and take some time for yourself before resuming your missions. Alexander, with his relaxed expression returning, flashes a smile. I thank you for your benevolence, cousin. However, there's something I need to discuss with you. Something of utmost importance in my life.
Chapter 40. Alexander. Of course, cousin. What troubles you? Caelum responds with a concerned tone. He is attentive, as he always has been, despite the evident weight now hanging over his shoulders as a monarch. The title of king has brought him a new seriousness, an air of responsibility that, though it existed before, now seems to shape every one of his movements. I adjust my posture, feeling the pressure of the moment. Caelum is not just my older cousin. He has always been something between a mentor and a brother to me. We grew up together, sharing secrets, dreams, and eventually the heavy responsibilities that come with our lineage. But now he is a king, a sovereign whose word carries the fate of a nation, and this changes the dynamic between us, creating a subtle but undeniable distance. Being a sworn soldier of the crown, being a member of the royal family, brings responsibilities I cannot escape. For 5 years, I managed to avoid the title of Duke of the Lowlands, but now that the mission is over, I must make decisions in my life. I must reclaim my lands and the title given to me even before I was born. Something I believe you will understand, Your Majesty, I begin, carefully choosing my words. Formality is necessary, even though a storm of emotions rages within me. We both grew up together, sharing the same view of the weight that nobility imposes on us. About what it means to carry the titles we inherited. For a moment, silence reigns between us. The distant sound of the wind howling through the cold stone corridors seems to echo my hesitation as I watch Caelum's face. He studies me carefully, as if trying to predict the words that will follow. What does he see in me now, after all this time? Does he notice the changes? The hardness in the lines of my own face, the shadow that has settled in my eyes. He finally breaks the silence, his voice deep and concerned. Do not tell me you want to relinquish the title of Duke of the Lowlands, Alexander. The idea visibly disturbs him. His brow arches, as if the possibility is inconceivable. In the times we live, I cannot accept such a renouncement. A bitter laugh escapes my lips, short and contained, as I shake my head in denial. No, Your Majesty. I intend to honor the title, to be the duke that the crown expects me to be, but my voice falters for a moment, and the weight of what I am about to reveal seems to grow. I believe I will need your support for my plans. I feel the heat rising to my face, the tension accumulating in the muscles of my shoulders. You are right in saying that the time has come for me to marry. I am 29, and for a long time, I have lived with the freedom that another identity in the kingdom of Syltirion afforded me. But my heart, Caelum, I pause, swallowing hard. My heart still cries out for a love I had to sacrifice 5 years ago. The words come out heavy with old pain, like a wound that never fully healed. The memory of Aria rises in my mind, sharp and clear, like the slash of a freshly sharpened blade. Her eyes, full of tears, staring at me with questions I could never answer. Why, Alexander? Is there someone else? Do you love someone else? These questions were more painful than any blow I have ever taken in a fight. For 5 long years, I tried to bury those feelings, drown them in missions, in the adrenaline of living a life under disguise. But the love I felt, and still feel, for Aria never dissipated, never weakened. It remains like a stubborn flame, lighting up the darkest corners of my soul, forcing me to remember every moment, every touch, every unspoken word. Aria never knew I was part of the royal family. My greatest skill was to take on various identities, to create personas for the good of the crown. Infiltrating and spying was almost second nature to me, as easy as breathing. But when I met Aria, this became more of a curse than a blessing. I was young and very immature, never planning to fall in love, especially with a human. But it happened. I tried with every skill I had to keep Aria and my life as a duke separate, more for her sake than my own whims. My parents never approved of any lycan woman I courted. If they knew about my relationship with a human, they might have killed Aria just to teach me a lesson. And with her being a commoner, there are no noble humans in Veridiana, although some wealthy humans are seen at noble events. My time in Syltirion, where enchantresses and humans lived together in peace, many even married to each other, awakened in me a desire to have that for myself as the years went by. I tried to forget Aria, got involved with some enchantresses and humans, but they all seemed to sense my heart was not with them. It was here in Veridiana, with Aria. What love, Alexander? What are you talking about? Caelum's voice is now tinged with confusion, and I see the shadow of surprise in his eyes. He didn't know, couldn't have known. No one knew about my story with Aria. The secret was my solitary burden, one I carried for years. I never shared it with anyone, not even with the man standing before me now, my cousin, my king. I take a deep breath, feeling the cold air of the hall burn in my lungs. My time away from court brought me wisdom, yes, but also left me with invisible scars, marks I can't ignore. Meeting Aria was the most unexpected and, at the same time, the most devastating thing that ever happened to me. She never knew who I truly was, never knew I was part of royalty, that I was destined for a title, a life that would never include her. And for that reason, I had to sacrifice her, leave behind the only love that truly mattered. I fell in love with a human, 5 years ago. I finally admit, the words heavy on my lips, each syllable laden with memories and sacrifices. My voice sounds strange to me, almost distant, as if I'm listening to someone tell a story that isn't mine. I avoid going into detail about Aria, about how her smile could light up even the darkest days, or how her soft touch brought a calm I had never experienced before. I fear Caelum's reaction as my king, not as my cousin. Caelum, now king, seems so distant, almost unattainable. He has responsibilities far greater than any we ever shared, and I wonder if there's still room for matters of the heart in his life, governed by duty. You fell in love with a human. Caelum's laughter echoes through the hall, deep and almost incredulous. He leans back in his velvet chair, shaking his head with a mix of amusement and surprise. Is this curse in the family blood? I furrow my brow, confused, trying to grasp the extent of his question. What does he mean? What other story could have unfolded in his life while I was away, dealing with the shadows of war and the intrigues of court? There's a mystery in his words, but he seems intent on pushing away any explanation that reveals more than necessary. Caelum shakes his head, as if trying to erase something from his mind. So, what do you want from me, cousin? His voice is softer now, almost compassionate, but still tinged with curiosity. I hesitate, the words weighing on me like stones in my mouth. What I'm about to ask isn't simple. Well, I need your blessing as king. I pause, taking a sip of wine to calm my nerves, the liquid sliding down my throat as I try to organize my thoughts. I will seek her out, Caelum. I don't know how she is now, actually. She may have moved on. But I hope she hasn't. If she's still single, I want to win her back. Marry her. Caelum, she is the love of my life. My voice weakens at the end of the sentence, the memory of Aria throbbing within me like a poorly healed wound. I gave her up to follow your orders, and that was the hardest decision I've ever made. All I ask now is your blessing. If she says yes, bless our union. The words come out heavy with emotion, a mix of pain, hope, and desperation. The memories of that fateful day when I had to break up with Aria return forcefully, like a wave crashing against rocks. The sound of her trembling voice, her eyes filled with tears as she repeatedly asked me why, still echoes in my nightmares. Is there someone else? Do you love someone else? I never could answer. I never lied, but the truth about who I really am and what I represent could never be told. Caelum watches me in silence for a moment, his fingers tapping softly on the side of the wine glass he holds. Finally, he scratches his head, as if my request has placed him at a difficult crossroads. Alexander, what you are asking is complicated, he responds with a note of regret in his voice. A noble lycan marrying a human would already be seen as a challenge. But a duke, Alexander, a duke marrying a common human, that's far more delicate. I feel my stomach churn at his words, though I had already expected this answer. I know, Your Majesty. I know very well what this implies. My voice remains firm, but inside anxiety bubbles up, ready to overflow. I would be willing to give up my title if necessary. But you yourself said that times do not allow for that. Caelum lets out a sigh, a discouraged smile forming on his lips. Here's what we'll do, Alexander. He shifts in his chair, his voice gaining a more upbeat tone, as if he has found a solution that could balance the weight of what's at stake. Complete this last mission for me. Eradicate the wolf-spawn renegades completely, and I will personally conduct the ceremony of your marriage to this human. He raises his wine glass with a confident gesture, as if toasting to the future. After all, as you said, there's a chance she's no longer single. But if she is, and if you manage to get what you want, so be it. I raise my glass, mirroring his gesture, but the relief I feel is deep and real. The burden I've carried for years begins to dissolve, though there is still one final obstacle ahead. One more mission for the crown, and I will have the right to fight for the love I lost. Agreed, Your Majesty. The words come out lighter now, as if the future is finally within my reach. I thank you for your kindness and understanding, I conclude, before drinking the wine, feeling the warmth of the liquid spread through my body, as hope begins to grow inside me. If you like it, subscribe, share, comment, and like. If you want to read the book, link in the description.